All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the October 15th meeting of the Trustees of Trust Funds. Note that there is a quorum since all trustees are here. And we'll begin with, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our last two meetings, September 17th meeting and the October 8th special meeting.
I'll move approval of meetings of the 17th of September and October 8th.
So, second.
Okay. Any comments or corrections? Or I have a couple.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
So on the October 8th meeting,
Yep.
I just want to clarify in the third paragraph, line 5, where it says, this is committing to writing Peter's comment. It says policy to have everything listed on the agenda in the regular meeting at least a week in advance. It's actually on the Friday
Right.
before the meeting.
Okay.
And then at the end of that paragraph where it says regular monthly meetings, just for clarification, I would say the chair noted that the confirmatory assignment was not negotiated and signed by SIPP until after Friday. Did you get those?
Run through the last one again.
Okay, so it says,
Chair noted.
Chair noted that the confirmatory assignment
Yep.
was not negotiated and signed by SIP until after Friday.
Yep.
That was my response when Peter brought up that issue. So, any other comments or suggestions? And we'll vote on the minutes as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much. Okay. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Susan to introduce our new liaison and to, for the record, and and to tell us the update you gave me on the Haven Metals. So.
Yes. So, good morning. And this is Jennifer Smith. She's our staff attorney. She's been with us for over a year now. 2 years in January. But as she said, she came from New York and practiced law in New York and a lot of municipal law in New York and has had her own career there, but came here as very dedicated to the idea of being a public servant and doing municipal law. So we're very lucky to have her here in the office. So she is going to help the legal department get you the help that you need, since my time is just very scarce at the moment in terms of trying to get some of your projects accomplished. And so we're going to have a little bit of a learning curve with, trusts and the issues surrounding trust documents, but Jennifer's very quick study. And I'm sure she's going to be able to help you out on the ongoing projects. We've talked a little bit about the fact that we want to develop a standard scholarship trust and reach out to the people who are interested currently in establishing trusts as a top priority. And then also we need to work through the investment policy. So that's what we've discussed, and so she's here to sort of observe and see how you progress with your meeting today. I think you have someone coming in 8 o'clock, at 8 o'clock via Zoom. And is that in regards to your investment policy or your banking?
Well, this is our investment advisors.
Okay.
They do quarterly meetings with us, 2 via Zoom and 2 in person, and just tell us where we're at, make recommendations on rebalancing, things like that. And they do, when we regularly reassess our investment policy for private donations, they give us feedback.
Great. So I think Jennifer can stay for that, so it'd be another way of introduction into the world of the trustees and your responsibilities. I have a meeting at 8 o'clock upstairs that I have to go to. So I'll just finish by saying on the Haven Metals, we've had some difficulty with the clerk at the probate court. So we've refiled as of yesterday again, and the issue was providing addresses for all the interested parties. So I've now provided an address for all of you as 1 Junkins Avenue. And when the sheriff gives us orders of notice, I will also do an acceptance of service for all of you. But I'm not sure why it's quite so difficult, all for an agreement on a non-judicial settlement.
Yeah, and it's to benefit the students.
Yes, I know, yes, but I'm hopeful.
Get with the program.
That's what I've been trying to tell the probate clerk, but
Give me his number, I'll let him know.
so we will, I do know, in my conversations with Mary Ann Dempsey at the AG's office, she said that this particular clerk is relatively new. So that may be one of the issues. They may not see these very regularly, but hopefully, the filing, the only thing that had to be changed was to add everyone's address. So everyone's address is
You
now
know my
1
address?
Junkins Avenue. That's your address. We're not gonna have the sheriff go out and serve you all individually. So, I will take service for all of you, so I'm not sure when your next meeting would be, but I might need to get you to sign off on a acceptance of service, giving me authority to take service for you, assuming this.
So John Meyer retired, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, a long time ago.
Susan?
November 19th.
November 19th.
This is, plus they've redone this court system since John retired, so this probate is no longer a separate court, it's part of the circuit court, same as the district court. And we're in Brentwood, right?
Yes, we're in Brentwood. So, yeah, our circuit, we have a criminal division in Portsmouth, juvenile division in Portsmouth, but we don't have a probate division in Portsmouth.
Can I add one item to the list of projects? You mentioned getting a template for scholarship funds. In addition, I think it would be really helpful if we had an outline available even on our website for anyone who wants to make bequests in their will, or what the process is. Does their attorney prepare it, or does the city attorney prepare it outside of just a scholarship bequest?
Well, that's a good thing. I think overall, I am hopeful. I think we've talked about it before in terms of updating your website, doing some work there.
Yeah.
That would maybe contain a standard trust document and maybe some other informational items, and we could put in, if you wish to leave money to the city, to bequest money, how to do it, kind of a how-to, who to contact, how to process it, and if we can do some language or a document that would be helpful, we could look to do that, yeah. I'd like to see us do that overall upgrading of the website.
For example, and we're gonna have it come up today on the public arts. And I noticed one of the contributions was from a donor advised fund. So how that gets accepted, or how it gets sent to the city, and whether it qualifies as a 401c, etc.
Yeah, I would I'd be hesitant to allow, certainly not encourage, but allow people to draft their own scholarship documents, because we spend more time trying to reform scholarship documents than,
Yes, yeah,
I mean, so I think it's important as well to have like a fact sheet that answers a lot of the questions, maybe something that lists the options, the parts where, you know, donors have options, and, you know, the difference between what we call a sunset scholarship, in perpetuity scholarship, because those are the questions we get. I mean,
All the
even
time.
when we're contacted by lawyers, but you know, particularly with people who are licensed in other states drafting these things, it would be problematic. So, I think our consensus would be to provide the information, but require the documents to come through your office.
yeah, we just have to thread the needle about providing legal advice on our website, but we can definitely do a sort of a fact sheet and a contact, who to contact, how to get through the process, directions. So that's a good project for us to be working on. But I really want to tackle the people that have been asking you
Oh,
for
yeah,
quite
yeah.
some time. That's our top priority.
What do we have, two?
So we're gonna work together to draft up a sample template and to reach out to those individuals in the next few weeks here, hopefully before your November 19th meeting. And then we'll be able to report something back to you at that point, hopefully.
That's great.
Yeah.
So go back briefly to Haven. Are you going to be traveling before our November meeting, back to Florida, what have you?
It's November 19th?
Correct.
Yes, I'll be in Florida.
Okay. So do you have a consent form that Dana could sign before?
I'll see if I
Not a
can,
consent, but an acceptance of
acceptance
service
service, I will see if I can put one together, yeah.
form? Yeah, I mean, it should be,
Yep.
it's a form anyways, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
so we can get you to sign that when the orders of notice are issued by the court. When do you leave?
Monday.
By Monday, before Monday?
Now, I mean, I can, if you, I can express it back to you if you
Sure.
just email it to me.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Anything else?
You have my Florida address.
Judy can find you. So I think that's it for us, for now. And I'm gonna head off to my 8 o'clock meeting and let Jennifer sit and watch you do your business, trustee's business, and get acquainted with it.
Excellent. Any questions?
This is great.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Have a good meeting. You'll be fine.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Lion's Den.
I should say, I also want to say thank you, because my son got several scholarships on his departure from his graduation from Portsmouth High in June. So thank you. That was
Wow.
great.
Is that Tommy?
It is.
She had the big Portsmouth High School graduation. Congratulations.
Where's he at school?
He's a William and Mary.
Southern.
Do you like Portsmouth High?
He did.
It's a good school.
Yeah, he had a good 4 years. He started, and we moved here right on the eve of 9th grade for him. So.
That's kind of, well,
COVID had already extricated them from their friend groups. They were going to school in their bedroom, so it
that's tough.
was, good time to move.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Quick question about
Yep.
forms. It seemed like the website has a lot of forms, or none of those accomplish what you're hoping to do.
Which forms are we talking about?
Like a with what we were just discussing, a form that says, here's what you do, here's what we need, if you want to donate, either as a scholarship or some generally.
I think that's the three categories that we had set up, the sunset, the named scholarship. I think that form's out there, but I mean, that hasn't been looked at.
But is it really a form out there, or is that the policy statement?
I don't recall a form.
Yeah, no,
Probably a policy statement.
So, yeah, so in 2018 or 19, in response to various questions we had, we adopted a scholarship policy statement, and it explains what the requirements are for establishing a named scholarship that's intended to last for a long time. There's a minimum contribution. We say that that money has to be raised within 3 years in case you don't have it right away. For smaller sums, we have what we call a sunset, or it's essentially a declining balance scholarship arrangement. But there are other things that we don't really discuss in the policy statement, and we don't get to the point of having a form, and so the form is, I think, consistent with my comments earlier, is I'm not sure that we want to simply put a form out there for people to fill in and then send it in with a check, thinking that that's all they have to do. It's really I would almost, it would almost be a questionnaire or something where, you know, here are the requirements, which option do you want, what would be the name, what would be the conditions for the recipients to receive the scholarship, things of that nature. And
then just describe the process. Once it's filled out, it'll go to city attorney's office for the trust document to be drafted for approval.
Okay, anything else, or?
The donations for the
Yeah.
public arts.
So the next item on the agenda is donations to the Public Arts Trust, and you see the
Very
number.
confusing if you look at the memos from Sean Clancy. The one that's dated the 23rd,
It's because he brings the checks to me as he receives them. He does not, they don't want anyone holding the checks, so they bring them down to the trustees, so he gives me a memo every time saying, here's two
well,
more
that says
checks.
4 checks.
Oh, did I, well, maybe I attached the wrong thing to the wrong, when I.
I don't know.
This is the fourth check. So you've got,
Yeah. You've got the 3 and then the one big one.
Well, this one, that one says 2 checks.
And
but
2
see,
checks.
flip on the back side of that.
Yeah. That's for Delhi.
All right, so I think maybe how you printed them out. So I
Here,
have,
you want my copy?
No, I printed them out from what you sent me.
so I've
I
got,
get the 4.
Yeah, that's.
I've got the 4 on one, I've got 2 on this one and 2 on,
Yeah,
I think it might have just been your printer.
No,
But, so just the background on this is that I was contacted by Sean, who had been collecting these checks, and he wanted to know what the process would be. And this is all sort of organized through the Public Arts Selection Committee, not the select, just the Public Arts Committee. They're actually doing solicitation on behalf of the city. And I said, the important thing from our perspective is that if we receive a check, it should not only indicate that it goes into the Public Arts Trust, but it should say the project that it's earmarked for, because we have all these subcategories under Public Arts Trust. And I think you see most of them say that it's for
Debbie.
the NEVI,
they're all for that.
which is already designed as it's gonna be constructed, I guess, when they get a certain minimum, so. And I explained to Sean, from our perspective, you should make sure you've got commitments for that before you send the artist off. You know, creating the work and then turned out you don't raise the kind of money you thought you were gonna raise.
Well, maybe it would be a good idea as the checks come over, we have a running tally of what the estimated cost was and what we have to date.
We can do that, but I told him that the trustees are not gonna get involved in any contractual relationship with the artist. So they're apparently selected the artist through a juried process, and they've negotiated the price with the artist. And
Well, maybe we ought to get a copy of the city council approval and see what that said.
we can do that. But I told him, we'll accept the money because this has been an approved project and we'll deposit the money, but don't come knocking on our door if you don't raise the whole money, thinking that we got other funds in the public art trust, because everything is earmarked. Except for the 25, I think there's a certain amount of money the city approved per year, 25,000, I think it was,
25.
in the capital improvement budget. That's not earmarked, but everything else, you know, whether it's because it's a 1% of a project or something like that, has an earmark on it. And so we can't just decide that we're gonna issue money from a shortfall.
But wasn't there something, was it the sewer plant that they allowed allocation?
They've already taken that.
Yeah, but, so the city council voted to spend that money and we issued that money.
Okay.
That was for the other project.
So, do we need a sub-account for NEBI under Public Arts? How are you gonna keep track of
We
that?
don't. I have it all on a spreadsheet. I
Just
have,
off,
just knowing when the money comes in, what it's allocated for. I keep track of it as it all comes in, so I know, what's earmarked for what.
Yeah.
So I keep track of it as it comes in, otherwise I'd lose sight of it. So I keep track of everything.
Yeah, so that's just an internal function, because we do have public expendable monies and donations. We actually have this in separate,
she might wanna know about that issue.
you know about that issue? Well, short version is that this goes to the question that Susan brought up about the need for having a revised investment policy for what we call public expendable funds. So anything that's in the nature of monies that are set aside, tax dollars that are set aside for a project, what would be considered a capital improvement project in towns and stuff, those monies, because they're expendable, but if they're not spent, the municipality can take those monies back. Those have to be invested in a more, I'll call conservative investment strategy than monies that have been donated to the city, such as the scholarships or things of that nature, where the funds can be invested in a more active equity type of investment strategy. And we have and if you haven't got one, let me know and I'll get it to you. We have an investment strategy dealing with public donation funds. It's very, very detailed, but we've been investing the taxpayer expendable funds, which are a much smaller portion than the monies that we handle in the donations. We essentially are putting them in money markets and CDs, but I believe, based on some of the materials issued by the AG's office, that there are some securities that it can go in, and we just need to know what we can do with those funds, other than just put them in essentially a bank, so to speak. But in the meantime, we keep those funds separate. And so in the case of the Public Arts Trust, because the city allocates 1% of every municipal construction project for public art, those funds have to be treated as expendable, but the donated funds, which are permanent, are invested otherwise. So we have two accounts for all those things.
Dan, it was your earlier question, the check from Fidelity?
Yes, and
It doesn't say on there
I was gonna bring that up, yes.
whether it was a Fidelity contribution.
There is a stub.
Oh, okay.
I just didn't make a copy of the stub. There was a separate stub with that. It had the donator's name on it.
Oh,
And had the Nevi sculpture on it.
Oh, okay.
It did. My apology. I didn't
Okay.
attach the stub.
I was wondering about
Yeah,
that.
there is a stub with that.
Alright.
Yeah.
So what, well, I guess we need to vote to accept these funds.
I'll move we accept the funds as presented.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
Just Judy, if you'll keep a running total for
I'll
us.
keep a running total and I'll get it
And what
out.
was approved initially
City
for the
council.
project?
Okay, yep.
I don't know why we have to vote to approve it, but aside from that, when we get funds, scholarship funds, we don't vote to approve it. I don't know, the city council voted to approve it,
Yeah.
but it's fine.
Well, yeah, I mean, other than, we've gone toward a trend of reserving the right to not accept funds if we think that they're encumbered or something like that, so it doesn't hurt to
Yeah, I agree,
accept.
it's fine.
All right, then I'll call the question. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye, it's unanimous. All right. Yeah. Morning, John.
Good morning. How's everybody today?
Very well. How are you?
Oh, John,
Good
Hey, John.
Thank you. Good morning.
You have an
Is
extra
my audio coming through okay?
It is.
loud and clear.
Okay. I hear a slight delay. Do you hear that?
no,
I will ignore it.
So I wanted to introduce you to Jennifer Smith, who's sitting to my left.
Good morning, Jennifer.
So Jennifer is with a relatively new arrival, about a year or so ago, with the Portsmouth Legal Department. And as of this meeting, she's going to be working with us on a number of issues related to trustee matters. And that will include things like our investment policy and things of that nature. So I wanted to have her sit in on one of these meetings so she gets to know you and you get to meet her, and she has a better understanding of what we do with the funds and how we work.
Sounds great. Well, nice to meet you, Jennifer. And please interrupt me during the presentation if there's anything you don't understand or need clarification on.
Okay, take us away.
Sounds great. Let me see if I can show. Judy, is screen sharing turned off?
Let me see. Hang on, I might have to get my tech guy. I don't know.
We can make do if so. Because everybody has the presentation, right, Judy?
They do.
We do, yeah.
Let me go grab Kevin while you go ahead and start now.
Okay. So let me just pull up mine on the screen here. So you only have one deck today because our typical market update deck doesn't come out until later this month. But if I am able to share my screen, I will share a recent interest rate forecast that came out recently.
Okay.
But if I can direct you to page, probably says page 4.
The scholarship.
It's got the pie chart on the front. So, Jennifer, I'll remind you as I do the trustees every meeting that the 4 accounts that we manage for you are all managed identically. The models are exactly the same. So what I tend to do in these meetings is go into detail on one of the accounts. I typically choose scholarship because it's the biggest. But my comments apply to all 4 portfolios. And if you look at scholarship in the top left, you can see this data is as of September 30th. And then that top table on the left, you can see the value at 9/30 was $14,995,000. It's been another very strong year for investment returns. I'll show you 2 different charts on this, but both quarterly and year-to-date results have been really strong.
Can you,
If you
John, you can't
Yeah.
share because Kevin's here and he can't see why you're not able to share your screen.
Do you not have a share button, or is it giving you an error?
When I hover over the share button, it says only meeting organizers and presenters can share.
Okay.
And it's just grayed out. I can't.
What happens when you hit share, Kevin?
I can share because it's the meeting organizer.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, perfect.
Great, thanks,
Oh,
Kevin.
that's why you're the tech guy.
All right, now I've just got to pick the right window to share. Did that work?
Yeah,
That works.
Great. And I think Suzanne joined us. Suzanne's at a conference this week, but Suzanne, did I see you on there?
She was and she dropped.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's probably connecting at her hotel, so we'll see if we get her back. You want me to admit her, Judy?
I got it.
Here we go. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne. You're on mute.
Yeah.
Adding to my technical challenges this morning.
good morning.
Morning, Suzanne.
How are you?
So, speaking to the asset allocation table, I know there's a lot of detail here, but Jennifer, I'll tell you what I tell the trustees every meeting. The pie chart that you see there is designed so that shades of blue are stocks and shades of yellow, if you will, are bonds. So you can kind of quickly ascertain that the portfolio is 75% stocks and 25% fixed income. And then the table to the right goes into a little more detail there. I'll show you the portfolio detail in a couple slides, but just at a high level, all of the investments are in the form of exchange-traded funds and investing in passive indices, which is actually a stated preference within your investment policy. That approach has also been consistent with the highest performing portfolios that we offer at TE. Funds continue just on a monthly basis to flow more into passive strategies than actively managed funds. They also have a lower cost structure, and it's just been a trend that shows no signs of abating. The last statistic I saw suggested that over 50% of the money flowing into the markets these days is going into passive strategies. So that has served you well. There's 10 in total, 4 for equities and 6 for fixed income. And like I said, I'll show you the detail on that in a couple pages here. And again, just to confirm, none of you are hearing the echo, right?
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Good. In the middle of the page, let me just blow this up a little bit for you. And you can see I just highlighted your performance. So inception to date goes back to 2021, just over 8%, and these are net of fees figures. Year to date, again, 2025, another really strong year for markets, just over 12% net of fees, and then the third quarter alone was almost 6%. And I'll show you more detail on that as well. The yield figure that you see at the bottom here is a reflection of the income that the portfolio throws off. Now, given that we're 75% equities, you wouldn't expect that number to be 5%. But my back of the envelope math tells me your equities are yielding about 135 and your bonds are yielding about 4%. And that has been consistent with the interest rate environment that we've been in for the past year or so. Over the course of this year, we have seen rates come down, and I'll show you that in the interest rate forecast later. Okay, so I have two charts that are identical here. I know there's a lot of information on this page. This is the third quarter results. Each row of this page shows you a holding in the portfolio. So let me just walk you through the top row here. You see you're holding in the S&P 500 index. This is a Fidelity fund. You can see it's just under 57% of the portfolio. It's in the style that we call large cap core. And then you can see the start date was the end of the second quarter. And then the third quarter performance was 7.88%. Below that, you see a 10% allocation to U.S. large value stocks, just over 5% for the quarter. And then below that, you see your 5% allocation to international developed markets. This was the first quarter this year that U.S. markets outperformed international markets. It's not that the U.S. Or that Europe, I should say, is growing faster than the U.S. In fact, the U.S. is growing faster, but we had a 10% to 12% depreciation in the U.S. dollar over the first 6 months of this year. And when those foreign earnings get translated back into U.S. dollars at a weaker rate, it translates into stronger performance for international stocks. You may remember, well, you would have heard this, Jennifer, but in the prior two quarterly reviews, I pointed out that the underweight to international has been a drag on portfolio performance this year. We haven't changed it simply because it's not based on economic results, it's based on foreign currency results, which we have expected to slowly reverse over time. And you can see this is the first quarter where that played out. Below that, you see all the fixed income holdings. Pretty good quarter across the board, all positive returns. If you look at the far right column, low single digits, which is what you'd expect for quarterly returns in a roughly 4% interest rate environment. However, rates have been falling throughout the year. And so, when you see almost 3% for corporate bonds, that's really a reflection of a fall in interest rates combined with increased investor demand for that product. And then lastly, at the very bottom, this is your small and mid cap allocation. It's been a really roller coaster of a year for this segment of the market. Most of the profits in the S&P 500 this year are being generated by the largest of the large cap stocks, the big tech companies that you're all familiar with: Apple, Google, Nvidia, Broadcom, Amazon, etc. Small companies have really struggled with all the uncertainty around tariffs and the price increases that has resulted in for their products. But the third quarter was strong. It's been very difficult to predict this, but almost 9%. So that was the third quarter. And now what I'm going to show you is the exact same chart, but year to date. So same presentation, same order, and what I really just wanted to point out to you here was two things. One, here you can see where the international markets have really outperformed the US year to date, even though that reversed in the third quarter. So 25% for the developed international markets versus just over 14 for the S&P 500. And emerging markets year to date were up 27%. The other thing I wanted to point out year to date is these returns that you're seeing from fixed income. I mean, this is really phenomenal. You know, north of 7% for your investment grade corporate bonds, nearly 7% for your 7 to 10 year US Treasuries. We don't live in an interest rate, a 7% interest rate world. The only way you get this performance out of bonds this year is because bond prices moved inversely to interest rates, and interest rates have been falling largely in anticipation of the Fed easing cycle that finally started last month. And I'll show you that in the next deck. And then just lastly, as it relates to the portfolio review, this is just a higher level performance chart. So same figures I showed you earlier, but it shows you the performance. So this TWRR column is your time-weighted rate of return net of fees. Again, third quarter just under 6%. And Jennifer, what I like to do in this report is compare it to your IPS.
Judy.
Looks like we lost Suzanne again. There she is.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the portfolio was up 597 in the third quarter, and what this COP IPS 615 references is if the asset allocation precisely matched the target weightings of your investment policy, you'd expect to see a return of about 6.15. And then I'll just show you, as I referenced earlier, if you look at the second quarter, 764 versus 790, and the first quarter, minus 160 versus minus 0.87. So the differential this year between your actual return and the policy is almost entirely due to the 10% underweight to international. The positive asset allocation has been, we have a 5% overweight to the S&P 500 and no exposure to REITs. So REITs have a 5% target in your policy, and the portfolio currently has no REIT exposure. So that's been a positive contributor, but the underweight, the 10% underweight to international is the main reason you see this drag here.
John,
And
can
again,
I
in the
ask
third quarter that reversed.
John, it's Dana. A quick question on international. What's the sense or relative to our portfolio on emerging markets?
Yeah, so your IPS target for emerging markets is 5%, and that's part of the 10% underweight. So Dana, when I say 10% underweight, 5 of that is to international developed, and 5 of that is to emerging. TD's current asset allocation committee is still underweight international, and so I'm not recommending a change there.
So, do we have a ETF in international? I mean, in emerging markets?
No, there's zero emerging market exposure currently.
So that's my question, whether, the policy allows for up to 5%. How do you feel about having some exposure to it?
Yeah, so the policy has a target of 5% with a range of 0 to 10. So we are in compliance with the policy with the 0% weighting. And the reason we're not adding it is simply because we expect the U.S. to outperform, particularly in light of the fact that the dollar depreciation seems to have bottomed in the third quarter specifically. Did I answer your question, Dana?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I'll have to noodle the answer for a bit.
Sounds good. And then lastly, I was just going to point out on this page that over the nearly 5 years, the portfolio is up just over 8.1% versus the policy at 7.66. And interestingly, the main reason for that outperformance is actually the underweight to international. Not having any REIT exposure has helped as well. Those were all the prepared comments that I had on the portfolio. I'll just point out to you that the further pages in the deck are just the identical pages for the other three trusts. I think Prescott's the first one. Even though we don't have our usual market update deck, I do have a quarterly forecast that just came out that I'd like to share with you. I'll go there now unless you have additional questions on the portfolio.
No, but would you mind sending that to me after the fact, John?
I sure will.
That's perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Great, okay, let me jump to this screen. The risk of blowing up. Didn't work. Okay, so here's our interest rate forecast. I highlighted 2 rows here. I know there's a lot of numbers on this page, but if you focus just on the top line, the first half of this is the description of the interest rates, and then 2025. I'll remind you, just by way of history, that interest rates were effectively zero going into 2022 when the Fed took the Fed funds rate from 0 to 5.5%. They took us down. We entered 2025 at 4.5%. That 1% decrease all took place between September and December last year. And we went into this rate, if I were to pull up our rate forecast from 9 months ago, you would have seen an easing priced in sooner than we actually got it. It finally came at the Fed's meeting last month, and they lowered 25 basis points to 4.25. The Fed has a dual mandate: stable prices, which they define as 2% inflation, and full employment, which doesn't so much have a statistical metric. In the old days, we used to think full employment was an unemployment rate of about 6%. Now it seems like it's between 4 and 4.5%. But with that, what happened in the first really 9 months of this year is inflation continued to run hotter than the Fed's 2% target. And meanwhile, the unemployment rate really held steady around 4%. So they just didn't have the incentive to ease. What we have seen is nothing's really changed on the inflation front. Inflation's still closer to 3% than 2%, but the labor market clearly has started to weaken. And so they cut 25 in September. We're forecasting an additional 50 basis points between now and year end, so that would be 25 this month. They don't meet in November, and then another 25 in December, and then another 50 basis points by the end of 2026 to occur sometime in the first half of the year. And then below that, I highlighted the 2-year Treasury rate, just to show you that while we forecast a 1% decline in the Fed funds rate, we're only forecasting an additional 30 basis point decline in the 2-year government rate. And right below that, we actually think the 5-year rate will rise about 10 basis points from where it is now. So the point of that is the rate cuts that we expect from the Fed are basically already priced into the bond market. Our forecast is entirely consistent with what the Fed is saying. After every meeting, the Fed shows us a chart of each Fed governor's own personal rate forecast as to where they think the Fed rate's going to be. And it gets you to the same kind of 3 to 3.5 range by the end of 2026. And then just lastly, if I go down one page here, again, a lot of numbers, but I tried to highlight. Let's see. Okay, so the top, I'll show you the annual average for our GDP forecast. So you'll know, as I've been saying, TD has not been in the recession, has not forecast a recession over the past 2 years. Going into this year, we didn't expect one. And as you can see, we expect 1.8% real GDP growth, so that's after the effects of inflation. Same for 2026, and then expanded growth in 2027. That's really based on expectations that the Fed easing cycle will be stimulative to the economy. The tax cuts that were passed will be stimulative, and big debate over whether tariff policy is going to be positive or negative. It's certainly positive in terms of money that's coming into the federal government, but whether it stimulates growth is definitely undecided. And then below that, I just highlighted again the Fed's 2 mandates. So the unemployment rate, you can see, we see on average about 4.2% over the next couple of years. We do think the unemployment rate will rise to closer to 4.4% early in 2026, but not rising dramatically above that, and then coming back down in 2027. And then 2 rows below that, you see our forecast for CPI. So even through 2027, we don't think we get back to the Fed's target, and tariff policy is obviously a component of that. One of the things that seems to be holding down the unemployment rate is current immigration policy is definitely reducing the supply of labor. And so relative to the number of jobs available, that's keeping the overall unemployment rate down. Any questions on our forecast?
Keep it positive.
Yeah, TD in our broad asset allocation updates that come out monthly, we remain constructive on stocks. We still think the U.S. is the best place to be. We did lower our forecast for S&P 500 earnings this year from like 12-13% to closer to 9.5%, and about the same going into next year. We do recognize that the majority of those earnings are coming out of the tech sector, and the largest components of the S&P 500. It's why we want you diversified across, the value segment, the international exposure you have, the small and mid cap stocks, and then obviously the bond portfolio as well. But not recommending any tactical changes to the portfolio at this time.
John, my only request, leave the World Series winner in the United States.
So help me out here, and I am a big baseball fan. What did I miss?
Toronto is in the.
Oh, duh. Gosh.
Yeah,
Thank you.
with TD all over the
He
uniform.
has
All over the background, all over the uniforms. Yeah, there's no missing it. Well, their offense seems to be missing, so I think you're going to get your wish. Well, looks like you're going to get your wish. We'll see.
Thank you.
Jennifer, and did I confuse you at all? Any questions?
No,
I can
that
answer for
that
you?
was great. Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, if anything comes up after the call, Judy knows how to reach me. I'll get right back to you. And Judy, I'll send you that economic forecast in just a few minutes here.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for your time.
That's great,
Thank you.
John,
Good day.
thank you, Suzanne.
Bye-bye.
Find it fascinating, the forecast doesn't really, the impacts of tariffs seem to be fairly minimal on the forecast. I find that difficult to absorb. But
Well, yeah, I'm a little skeptical that they won't have some type of recession for the next 2 years. That would be an extraordinary run.
Yeah.
But it's good for us if it's true. Okay, we got a couple other items related to John's report. One is the dashboard. that you received via email. Any questions on that?
Okay.
It pretty much was consistent with what you just heard, so. And then the second one is, last month, we saw our first consolidated statement of accounts. And so I worked with Judy on adding in a little more information in it. I thought it would be helpful to have the 4 TD managed funds spread out separately instead of just as a single fund, just so we know. And then added under the description an idea of some of these ones that are in the bank account in the different financial institutions are singular trust or multiple ones, and so that's all spread out there. Any questions about that?
No, this is great.
And is
It's a
it?
big improvement. This is a big plus.
Yeah, so this is really the, on a monthly basis, we'll know exactly how much is in not only the TD ones, but in the other accounts as well, and what our ongoing balance is. And so I've asked Judy for next month to do some research in area banks on what money market account will be paying, because at least with respect to the Citizens in Bangor one, those are checking accounts which have a really minimal interest, if there's any interest at all. What are the, do you know off the top of your head, Judy, what the checking accounts are?
I don't, off the top of my head, it's real small.
Yeah, it's
I
got-
mean, the Citizens is tied in with the, which is our checking account, which is every check that we cut is out of that account.
Yep.
That's affiliated with the city, tied in with the whole group, so we get some kind of a,
So it comes out of one of the other accounts and winds up in Citizens until it's paid.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay.
That's really what we do on, the Prescott Park
Yeah.
one and the marine maintenance account, we.
Yeah, I transfer the money out of the investment to cover what you approve to be paid out, so. And it goes into the Citizens, everything, all the checks are flowed through the Citizens account.
Do we need a vote to move that $24.64 into?
Why don't you, we can do it now, or we can wait until next month when I have everything all together and do it at that time. It's totally up to you.
Well, it's such a.
So go ahead and vote it, and
I
I'll
would just authorize you to move that.
close
to-
it, put it in the Citizens account, and then we'll
Yeah.
figure out what we're gonna do.
Does that
It's
make
either
sense?
part of the other. Okay.
Is that, you all agree with that?
Is that Daniel Trust
When we had a CD.
defunct?
Well, basically, yes, there's that chunk of money that's sitting in there that's for veterans, that it was 12,000.
2,000.
So when we
Excellent.
closed the CD and took the biggest piece of the money out, they gave us the amount at that time, not realizing that there was a little bit of accrued interest that came in afterwards, like at month end, and it's just been sitting there. So basically what Tom is suggesting is just taking the 2464 and then moving it over to where the money resides for the veterans, just,
So-
moving it.
So on this list, where is that veterans?
The veterans' money, let me think about this.
Look at the footnotes. So number 2
Yeah,
is
it's,
the
Okay, yeah.
it's in
savings.
Bangor, so we'd move it from the Newburyport over into
Okay.
Bangor,
Okay,
okay?
got it, thanks.
So it would be used with what's left for the annual veteran celebration, so.
So,
Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll come up with a chart of what
Yep.
rates are and determine whether we can move some of this around to higher yield in November.
are you gonna take a vote on that, please?
Yes, I'd accept a motion to move that monies from its this is the $24.64, and actually 2 pennies more by now, from the Newburyport Bank account into the Bangor Savings Bank to consolidate it with the other Daniel Street funds. Would someone like to make that motion?
We move the $24 and whatever the balance in the
Yeah.
Daniel Street Trust is.
Yeah.
To the Bangor.
Yeah.
Fund.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. All right, anything else, other than signing checks?
This is good, 30.7 million.
Yeah.
Like a responsibility.
It, it probably as of today wouldn't be that.
Huh?
As of today, it wouldn't be.
Why?
Took a hell of a hit last Friday.
Yeah, but it came back.
Yeah, it came back.
Not the whole.
Pretty much.
So I have 2 checks, both of them are scholarship. One comes from Futures and one comes from just a regular community scholarship.
Okay. Ooh, Middlebury.
The
Miles.
Futures one is different. It has been voted on by the Futures Board and signed off on by the superintendent. It is to cover the remaining rent expense for a student that's been enrolled because they didn't have room in the dorm, so she had to take an apartment. And so Futures does evidently cover, rent and board and living and all that, so, what is on the bottom line? That's what that one's for.
So why wouldn't that be covered under the funds that are with New Hampshire Charitable?
I don't know, they've just,
Where do we stand with the futures? You told me you had some.
This is for rent?
it's the remaining of the semester. I mean, it's basically for the semester.
Rent for the semester or the semester two? The cost of college?
No, it's rent.
Holy mackerel.
There's the rent agreement. There's and then I made her send me, the last page is a full description of what it is, because I said, this is different, you need to tell me what this is.
It's paying $1,000 a month in
Yeah.
rent.
But where's she going to school?
This is,
Well, that's to the landlord, to the school's apartments.
Not
Rochester, New York,
Yeah.
one of the schools there.
RIT probably.
Yeah.
But let me just say, $1,000 a month doesn't seem like expensive rent.
No, and dormitory costs are, I mean. Okay,
Tell her get a room in.
I think she has one, believe it or not.
How to get a car,
Okay, thank you.
So let me, when do our 2 CDs come up for renewal?
January,
Okay.
so I will have rates, new
All right,
rates
so
in
you'll
December.
just go ahead and do that. So we probably have to make that decision in December though, right? Okay, all right. Nobody from the public here to comment? Would you like to make any comment? You could say what a great meeting or something.
It's so nice to see such a robust scholarship fund, honestly, that's great.
Yeah, it is, it's extraordinary.
What's the total we give out a year?
It was over 300,000.
That is
Yeah, it
to
was
it.
over 320,000.
And how many kids graduated in your son's class, or about?
260.
Sounds right, I
Yeah.
really don't know.
In the $300,000.
No,
That's like well over $1,000 a kid.
no, we've been very generous in this community supporting education. Okay, then, any other new business? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I'll second.
All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you very much.